Our planet is packed full of amazing attractions, from naturally occurring wonders to ancient artifacts that give us a glimpse into lost civilizations. But with more than 7.5 billion people inhabiting Earth, our most spectacular and culturally significant landmarks are being destroyed at our hands. Be it down to tourism, vandalism, war, or climate change, some of the most awe-inspiring places in the world no longer exist. Number 10. Pavlopetri, Greece. Pavlopetri is an incredible ancient underwater city off the coast of Greece. Thought to be around 5,000 years old, this once bustling city is said by UNESCO to be the oldest submerged lost city on Earth. The site still features remains of buildings, courtyards, streets, and burial places. But sadly, since its discovery in 1967, it's not getting anywhere near the care and respect that it deserves. Quite the opposite, actually. Pollution and looting are threatening its very existence. Cruise ships docking nearby expel waste and chemicals that are harmful to the ancient city, and boats dragging anchors over the site has caused it significant damage. Also, the entire site is unprotected, so it's vulnerable to theft. The danger of this fascinating historical site being ruined is so severe that UNESCO put it on its World Monuments watch list in an effort to put a stop to its destruction. I'd hope it works. Number 9. The Buddhas of Bamiyan, Afghanistan. It's no secret that war has ravaged our planet, and for the past few decades, Afghanistan has time and again been devastating proof of this. Perhaps the country's worst cultural loss of all was that of the Buddhas of Bamiyan. The ancient sandstone carvings were etched into a cliff in the Bamiyan Valley back in the 6th century, when Bamiyan was a holy Buddhist site home to tens of thousands of monks. The statues survived for hundreds of years, and even withstood Genghis Khan's reign of terror. They were once the world's tallest Buddhas until 2001, when Islamic fundamentalists planted explosives around the landmark statues and blew them to smithereens. The Taliban forced prisoners to carry out the bombings, and the process took almost a month to complete. Witnesses claim that the Taliban celebrated their vile accomplishment by slaughtering 9 cows as a sacrifice. Number 8. Coral on Christmas Island, Australia. Coral reefs are living ecosystems and are one of the most spectacular sights that you can see under the ocean's surface. But if you want to catch a glimpse of them, you'd better act fast, because they're being destroyed at an alarming rate. Take the coral surrounding Australia's Christmas Island, for example. By 2016, up to 90% of the shallow water coral has been badly bleached due to the rising ocean temperatures caused by global warming. Higher temperatures push corals to expel the algae that gives these organisms their vivid color, and today, much of the reef has been bleached stark white. Take a look at this image by the Curtin Aquatic Laboratory. Over the course of a month in 2016, a view of the coral reef went from looking like this to this. It's a stark change. You'll notice the once flourishing reef is now a paler white, indicating a tremendous halt in growth of the coral in the ecosystem. Sadly, this trend is unlikely to end, and has far larger implications than simply reducing tourism. Even though they only cover only 1% of the ocean seabed, coral reefs are home to 25% of the species in the ocean, and most open ocean fish, such as tuna, start their lives as larvae on coral reefs. Their destruction would lead to a demise of thousands of species you wouldn't even associate with reefs. Number 7. Pig Island, Exuma, Bahamas. The swimming pigs of Exuma Island in the Bahamas are famous around the world for their friendly nature and photogenic cuteness. There are many theories about how the pigs came to be on the island. My favorite, though, is the story that the pigs arrived at their new home when a group of sailors dropped them there to be cooked later on. For some reason, the sailors never returned for dinner, so the walking bacon survived and they lived on what's locally known as Pig Beach for around 30 years. Tourists have visited the island ever since for the chance to splash around with the adorable oinkers, but sadly, this practice took a sinister turn in 2017 when 7 of the pigs were found dead. Whilst some survive, reports indicate only about half of the pig population were wiped out. It's not known exactly how they died, but there were widespread reports of tourists behaving awfully toward the pigs. Visitors are said to have been seen feeding them rum and beer and even trying to ride them. Hopefully, this awful event will serve as a reminder to treat the inhabitants of Pig Beach with the care that they deserve. Number 6. The Aral Sea. Once the 4th largest lake in the world, the Aral Sea, split across Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, is now a puddle of its former self. Fed by precipitation and snowmelt flowing down from faraway mountains, it was a temperate oasis in an arid region. But in the 1960s, the Soviet Union diverted 2 major rivers to irrigate farmland, cutting off the inland sea from its source. The Aral Sea has been slowly disappearing ever since. These images show how the Aral Sea and its surrounding landscape have changed over the past few decades. You'll notice that the northern basins have replenished since 2005, as a dam was built to reduce flow of water to southern basins, but the south has continued to dry up. Today, it's roughly 1/10 of its original size. Not only have local fisheries collapsed, leaving boats scattered in the middle of the desert, local nearby settlements are exposed to strong dust storms, leading to respiratory diseases. The project succeeded temporarily as it helped farmers from Uzbekistan produce cotton, which is its main cash crop, but a lack of foresight means the industry isn't sustainable.
Pesticides have been used to combat falling crop yields, subsequently polluting runoff, creating severe pollution and health problems. Even though using the water provides a boost to local economies, it's hard to argue the short-term gains have been worth it. What do you think?
Number 5. Minqin County, China. Desertification is the term for when dryland ecosystems degrade and deserts expand, which causes havoc on the surrounding land and population. To see how damaging that can be, you only need to take a look at the Sahara Desert. The world's largest desert has grown more than 10% over the last century. Deserts are defined as places with a very low average rainfall, and the areas in brown here indicate reducing rates of change in precipitation over the past century over the continent of Africa. As deserts expand, farming becomes next to impossible, leading to hunger, poverty, and poor water quality. But Africa isn't the only place affected. China is facing a similar battle, and within the next 10 years, the Tanger and Badain Jiran deserts are expected to swallow up Minqin County. It was once an oasis and acted as a natural barrier to the desert, but it's being covered by the expanding sands at a rate of 10 meters per year. Calculations carried out 10 years ago showed that 70% of the land had already been lost. The Chinese government is so worried that they're spending $2 to $3 billion a year by planting a vast amount of trees in an attempt to stop it eventually turning into a desert. The panic is due to a terrifying and often overlooked consequence of drought and food shortages, civil unrest, and even full-scale war. As long as the desert grows, economic hardship will grow alongside it, and this paints a very uncertain future for China, and specifically the inhabitants of its northwestern regions. Number 4. Great Mosque of Aleppo, Syria. As the Syrian civil war rages on, much of the country's beloved landmarks and religious sites have been bombed, torn down, or looted. Perhaps the most iconic cultural heritage site to have been destroyed is the Great Mosque of Aleppo. The structure that stood until 2013 dated back to the 11th and 14th centuries and was said to be home to the remains of Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist. During heavy fighting between government forces and rebels, the minaret, which is the tower that's usually used for the call to prayer, was reduced to rubble. The structure was so important to Syrian culture that the destruction was called an indelible disgrace and a crime against human civilization. Hundreds of other culturally significant landmarks, including the Al-Madina Souk in the heart of Aleppo, have been destroyed, and others like the Croc de Chevalier medieval castle have been damaged. As unrest continues, it remains to be seen how much more damage Syria will suffer. Number 3. Lake Pupo, Bolivia. Lake Pupo was once the second largest lake in Bolivia, second only to the spectacular Lake Titicaca, which straddles Bolivia's border with Peru. Communities have grown on Pupo's edges for decades to take advantage of the fishing opportunities that it presents. But now, those communities are suffering because the lake has all but dried up. Originally, Lake Pupo was around 380 square miles, which is 1,000 square kilometers or approximately twice the size of Los Angeles. But thanks to El Nino, climate change, and the mismanagement of water, the lake shrank to 2% of its former size back in 2016. Pupo was once home to around 200 species of birds, mammals, and fish, and by 2014 there were already millions of creatures dead due to the dried up lake. The lake has shrunk before, but droughts have never been this severe. As a result, indigenous communities are breaking apart and migrating to other parts of Bolivia to look for work, now that fishing is no longer an option. Number 2. Guaira Falls, Paraguay, and Brazil. At one time, the border of Paraguay and Brazil was home to one of the world's biggest and most spectacular waterfalls. But if you visit the site, you'll be very disappointed, because it's now nothing but a very boring hydroelectric dam. Back before 1982, when the dam was closed and the falls were flooded, Guaira was the most powerful in the world with regards to total volume. 18 individual falls shot 1.7 million cubic feet of water per second into the river below, and it's said that the noise generated by the falls could be heard from miles away. The falls boasted 12 times as much water as what makes up Victoria Falls, and they had double the flow of Niagara Falls. As well as destroying the tourist trade in the area, around 10,000 families were forced to relocate because of the construction of the dam. That being said though, the dam does provide 75% of the electricity used in Paraguay and 25% used by Brazil. Was it worth it? I really don't know. What do you think? Number 1. Mayan Pyramid, Belize. Brace yourself. This has got to be the most mindless destruction of an amazing attraction of all time. In 2013, a construction company bulldozed one of Belize's largest Mayan pyramids to use the rocks for gravel in a road building project. How stupid is that? The Mayan ceremonial site is called Nomul and dates back at least 2,300 years. It is by far the most important site of its kind in northern Belize, and its loss is devastating to local communities. The 30-meter-tall pyramid was extremely well known in the area, and even though it was overgrown with trees and brush, it seems highly unlikely that the construction crew could have mistaken it for a natural hill. Instead, it seems as though the builders just couldn't be bothered to quarry somewhere further away from the new road project.